Good evening from Los Angeles. Tonight, the long-awaited verdict in the Derek Chauvin murder trial. Plus, we say goodbye to a former vice president and Democratic presidential nominee, and much more tonight on The Read Down. Good evening and welcome to The Read Down. I'm Jonathan Welch. This is your weekly progressive political hot take put on by the Stonewall Democratic Club. We have so much to talk about tonight, so I'm excited to introduce my co-hosts, Ebony Murphy-Root.
Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. Pretty happy Tuesday. I'm excited to talk about everything with you tonight. Let's welcome Alex Mohajer.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Oh,
Very smoking jacket, cigar moment.
Yes.
Ebony has a glass of wine, right?
Yes.
I don't want to blow up this. It's a Tuesday. It's nighttime. This is not. You can do whatever you want.
It is evening time on a Tuesday.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Well, we have a really wonderful special guest this week. I'm excited to introduce her. She is a senior manager for Courage, California. She is also a board member for the Black Women's Democratic Club. It's Molly Watson.
Hey, y'all. How you doing?
Good to see you, Molly. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited to talk with you all tonight.
Absolutely. And we have a lot going on in the news. I'm sure everybody was watching TV, listening to the radio, glued to their phones, just seeing what was happening today with the verdict coming in from the Derek Chauvin murder trial. Former officer Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd right in front of our faces almost a year ago in broad daylight with his knee on his neck. It was very clear what happened, but of course the trial played out. The jury deliberated for only 11 hours and the verdict was read. I believe we have video of the verdict, so I'm going to cut to that.
Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota Plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, defendant. Verdict, count 1. Court file number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury foreperson 019.
So to recap that is guilty of second-degree murder, guilty of third-degree murder, guilty of second-degree manslaughter. Those counts could carry with them a sentence that could put Chauvin behind bars probably for the rest of his life. But we will not find out what that sentence will be for another 8 weeks. At the end of the verdict reading, he was carried away in handcuffs, a very different posture from that of a defendant in a case. He was found guilty and taken away. It was incredibly emotional. I cried right away. It was not something that I think I expected. I want to go to our guest this week, Molly, and I want to hear your initial reactions to the guilty verdict.
Yeah, I think that as Black people in America, we have this like very low expectation for the system in general to ever really pan out in the ways that we needed to. So I very much was expecting either verdict and just looking to see what was going to happen next. I think that while it was there was some relief in knowing that Miss Floyd's family was at least having their turn right in court for the system to supposedly work finally. I think that was good. And then I feel like I immediately was just like, and so what the fuck are we gonna do next? It feels like it was the beginning, like it was a start. I've been watching that show Them on Amazon Prime, and it's slightly terrible and terrifying. It's really terrifying, and my mind immediately went to like everyone else that has been through some shit like this and never got to have a moment like this at all. So if anything, I think it's crazy because it's kind of like a numbing feeling that I think I got right after having a little bit of joy, and then just being like, why can't we do this for everyone else? And we had to have all of these things here and readily available and seen, and all these witnesses in order for America to figure it out on that jury. And I'm glad they had some folks who clearly took a minute to see what was going on and deliberate. But it's I don't know, it's still a very funny, feeling.
I think that there was an unexpected element to it, and seeing that happened, because we've seen so many of these play out, and it's rare that you see a member of law enforcement actually be held accountable.
Right.
One thing that I'm reading that I think we should acknowledge is that it's not really justice per se, because it's just accountability, and it's a long road to justice, and really you cannot bring these victims back. And we have we're seeing this verdict in the wake of other shootings, including one right in the Minneapolis area that happened just last week. And so there's more to be done. I'm going to go to Ebony. Do you think that this is a turning of the tides? Do you feel like something is changing?
I wish I could feel that way, but I don't. I think this was one case that was so egregious that they had to convict this officer. And I think that he was shocked that he was convicted. There was a micro moment on his face in which I saw utter surprise that his blue life was not more important than the Black life that he snuffed out in front of all of us. And so I do think that jury knew that if they did not convict that man, there would not be a target left in this country. But I don't know if that can be indicative of everything else. I hope so. But the fact that we all feel so grateful right now, I think says something about the fact that we can't extrapolate this to everything else. We'll see.
And we're seeing a lot of people in the streets around the courthouse in Minneapolis, and I think throughout the country, who are just in peaceful demonstration tonight, and just kind of showing a lot of respect for George Floyd, for his family. There was definitely a very positive tone from the Floyd family, and this feeling of just a feeling like they could be relieved, like they could actually celebrate the moment. Alex, I know that this is weighing heavily on you, and I want you to chime in as well about how you're feeling.
I don't know that it's weighing heavily on me. I think I wept as well. I didn't expect to. I didn't think that's. I knew when they finished up deliberating very quickly it was going to be a guilty verdict, because that's having worked in the law, and I understood that it was going to be guilty, and yet still waited on bated breath for the hour and a half that they made us wait, because I was like, but it's a cop and he killed a black guy. And, you know, George Floyd's death almost a year ago, almost 11 months ago, was sort of like, for a lot of people who consider themselves allies or woke or whatever, it was like a wake-up call, because we can be liberal, we can be progressive, we can say, oh, I'm racist, but what have we done to be anti-racist? What have we done to help support this cause in ways that is more than just lip service? And so I would say my journey into anti-racism is fairly new, and I wept out of a sense of relief, but I also wept out of a sense of sort of heavy-heartedness at the fact that it doesn't undo the killing, that there's nothing good that comes out of this situation. Derek Chauvin going to jail is justice being served for George Floyd. That rallying cry that we've been crying out for a year at the protest, and I have my sign with me that has seen some miles, that for this in this specific case, justice has been done. But like, we're literally watching this happen across the country all the time. And maybe because my journey into anti-racism is new, I'm much more plugged into the fact that it's so pervasive in a way that maybe I wasn't before, which was my own ignorance and sort of narrowness. But I agree with Molly, like there's still work to be done. And as a queer person, and I don't identify as white, I'm a person who's a queer man and belongs to a minority. I also feel like our community has a unique responsibility to this movement, because Stonewall Democratic Club's name was born, the namesake was born from a riot that happened in response to police brutality in an oppressive surveillance police state. And so much of the progress that we've made for our community has been because of people of color and trans people of color particularly. And so I feel like if you're a person that enjoys the fruits of that fight and sits in a position of privilege today, the way that I know that I do, that we have a unique responsibility to see this movement through to the end. This isn't like, oh, we won. Like there was justice done on this case here today, but there's still a lot left to be done. I mean, this is the beginning. I believe that this signifies a change in the tide. I think there's a reason we're all so damn surprised that a police officer was convicted. That's for a reason. It may have been the first, but there's still work to be done, and I'm anxious to get to that. To get to that work for our community and for everybody that needs this needs safety in this country, that needs to feel safe, and it's our responsibility to do that. So that's my thoughts.
Vice President Harris and President Biden spoke after the verdict was read, and one of the things that Vice President Harris said, and I kind of want to open this up to everybody, is just that this is the horrors that have been in the Black community for years and years are now getting, they're now getting a light shown upon them because we have smartphones, because people are there and there are very brave kids, really kids who viewed what was happening almost a year ago and filmed it. And this is happening in multiple cases across the country. So I'm wondering if I am wondering if more people are going to be at the ready with their phones. Are they going to be watching police activity more closely? Have we been watching police activity more closely in the past year? And do we have more opportunities to continue to turn the tide if this is what you're saying, Alex? If this is going to change how officers of the law are prosecuted.
I will say that I'm doing more of that. I was in downtown Long Beach a couple weekends ago, and I saw a bunch of police officers come and sort of swarm 4 teenagers over a missing phone. I will say that one time I was harassed in Ralph at the downtown Vons and called the police, and no one came because the grocery store is private property, but 10 SUVs came for these 4 teenagers for supposedly a stolen cell phone. And one of the officers came up to me and he said, why are you watching? Everything's fine. We're investigating a strong armed robbery. And I said, well, I see a bunch of 7th graders. I did not see a strong armed robbery. And I just watched, I just observed with my husband while the interaction happened, because I saw what looked like a bunch of children and 10 officers with guns. And, they always have sort of their hand on the gun. And I just observed, right? I maintained distance. I didn't say anything rude. I just watched and I recorded because I didn't want any children to get hurt. And I'm doing that more and more, even though it's scary. They don't like when you watch them, but I was just observing to make sure that all those kids who may or may not have yanked a cell phone got out of there alive.
Oh, it makes me mad because it's not their place to say you can't watch us, like they are public servants. They're people who we pay their paychecks. We need to watch them. We have the right to watch them.
Jonathan, you and I have talked on this broadcast about our experience last, I think it was October, on that street corner with the Trump protester. And there were just a group of young, they're 13 years old, Black kids who joined us in sort of being like, Trump is a racist and fighting with this Trumper. And they called the cops. And we were keenly aware of how those that the Trump supporters, those white Trump supporters, knew exactly what to do, and even said to the cop they're being violent, even though that we weren't. Yep. And we asked the question, what would have happened to those kids had we not been there? You know, and I think that was like pretty eye opening. And they were kids. And a commenter, Michael Kubica. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but it's spelled with K. Member of the Kardashian family, says, horrible. We're not doing enough. Columbus PD just pumped a 15-year-old girl full of lead. And look at what we just went through with Dante Wright, 20 years old. I mean, like I've seen the video. Dante Wright had his hands in the air. I mean, it's still going to be a pervasive problem. And this isn't something that's solved overnight. I'll note that the Reverend Al Sharpton and Joe Biden and others have all spoken today and reminded us about the Justice for George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, yes, which is going to be up before the Senate and would implement significant police reforms. There's work that we can do politically too, on top of working to hold our police departments accountable.
Mm-hmm. There's work to be done locally and on the state level.
Right.
I want to go over to Molly because I know you work a lot on the state level, and I just wanted to remind everybody that it is your right to observe and also film these people doing their jobs. So Molly, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm all for being nosy. I feel like everyone else is, particularly police, when they feel like it. And I, like Ebony said, like it's our right to be able to stand and watch. And of course, we also try to, I think that this is a strong suit as well for folks to come in, especially folks that are not of color, because you have way less of a chance of them calling the police on you. And then it's something we don't have to deal with as much of either. But I also think it's a practicing lesson in being able to see the humanity and the people that are being victimized. Because that, those experiences and those things that we put our heart out for are the things that help us sort of like better understand how to bring our values to the table and see situations for what they are. And yes, I do work for an accountability organization. We mainly focus on the state level, although we dive also pretty deep into local government too. And, I think it's interesting because we see I'm excited for the Justice in Policing Act, but I also just know that there's so many infrastructural things that we need to make happen at the same time. So, we released our scorecard today, our Courage Scorecard. Go to couragescore.org, check it out. But one of the things that we started listing and the scorecard basically is like an intersectional scorecard, and we get the hardest bills to pass in California state government because Basically, we have, a super duper majority of Democrats that sit in the Assembly and the Senate. However, rarely do they show courage. They abstain from votes. I know that Senator Hurtado today actually killed a maternal health bill in the Health and Human Services Committee today by not letting it be heard. There's just like things that happen all the time that we don't hear about and we don't know about. And so we create Courage Score to help create some accountability and let people know how their folks are actually voting in committee and floor votes. That being said, part of what we list in Courage Score as well as our voter guide is how much money is being invested into candidates and how much money is going towards different campaigns. And that goes everywhere from the state level all the way down to the local level. We're seeing, law enforcement in particular see that folks are not really messing with them anymore. At least some of them are not, right? So we have folks that are signing, no cop money pledges. We have people who are running on reform, right? Like we just elected George Gascon to hold the police accountable, and they're doing everything they can to try and get him, to be discredited. They're trying to do a recall against him right now. It's being led by Sheriff Villanueva, who is, just a terror on the Los Angeles community at the moment. And so there's just so much more ingrained in the system and in the infrastructure that we need to actually be able to get at to really, see this difference come through. And I don't know, I'm excited for it to happen in certain spaces, but I also just feel like, when are we going to go, further to actually change the whole system? And so it's about getting your cell phones out and recording. And it's also about, telling your legislator you don't want them taking police money or standing with your reform candidate to make sure that they're changing the system from the inside out.
I think it's a great tool that you're working on, Molly. I think that any place where we can have a scorecard or something really simple for people to look at, and they can see kind of where their lawmakers rank and what needs to be worked on, and what needs to be celebrated too, because it's not just a negative finger wag, that we're watching you guys, but it's what are you guys doing right,
Right. I mean, I think there's a big piece of and we try to be careful with it at Courage because we tend to be loudmouths a little bit, but we also try to figure out how to hug folks a little bit too, give them an opportunity, try to be there as a resource. And also we love to stand with people who do the right thing, right? I was sad when we released our scorecard today because it was missing 3 of our main all-stars who we lift up for doing the right thing, right? So Rob Bonta, who's, being ready to be appointed to AG for California, Dr. Shirley Weber, who just became our Secretary of State, who was an Assembly member as well. And then we lost our, basically our moral compass in Holly Mitchell. Thank God we still have her in LA County. But, she's sort of been the most courageous, been the one to stand up to all of the other things. She doesn't take shit from anybody else. And, I think that she led and a lot of people followed, and I'm a little bit nervous to see what's going to happen now that she and Dr. Weber and some of them are not there, and hopeful for the folks that are, coming in. But it's I don't like a lot of them and I love a lot of them. So it's it's fun to navigate.
Yeah, I can't wait to check it out, Molly, and to dive into it, because I'm just so curious, where my local reps kind of fit into everything. And also, like you said, we lost some of these really strong voices for other positions, which are great. It's great to see them go into these other positions and to see what they're going to do. But it's still okay, well, now who's going to rise up? Because like you said, just because we have a Democratic supermajority doesn't mean that we're moving in the right direction always. So
100%. Yep.
Very
100%.
Can I plug something too while we're on this subject real quick?
Sure.
I did a bystander intervention training with an organization called ihollaback.org. That's the URL. They're doing free trainings for anyone who's interested in how to intervene in instances on the street where you see street harassment or racism or abuse by police. It was a very, very helpful training. I highly recommend it. It's become so popular you have to book your session in advance, but I really found it extremely informative for people who are just like, hey, I really want to help with this cause, and I care about this cause too. I want to be an ally, and you like some direction on how to do that, hollaback.org. Check it out.
That's
That's awesome.
Very good plug, Alex. And I also want to share something John Erickson mentioned, to download the mobile justice app from ACLU SoCal, because these are tools that you can use to capture what's happening if you do encounter something where the police are not acting right. So very important tools, all of these. So we're talking a lot about obviously what's going on in Minneapolis. There's other news coming out of Minneapolis this week. As a Democratic Club, we wanted to report and reflect on former Vice President and 1984 Democratic nominee Walter Mondale passed away yesterday at the age of 93. He served as Vice President from 1977 to 1981 under President Jimmy Carter. He was a beloved Democrat. He was certainly a progressive in his time, and someone who has kind of stayed in politics. He didn't really retire and kind of slink away. He always used his voice, and he was able to speak with his successor, Kamala Harris, shortly before he passed away. And one of the really important connections there is that you can argue that Walter Mondale helped to pave the way for us having a woman vice president now, because in 1984, he made the decision to add Geraldine Ferraro to his ticket as the first woman on a major party's ticket. A very exciting time. Of course, they didn't win. We wish they had, because unfortunately Reagan won again and wasn't up to the job. So, so reflecting on Mondale, I want to kick it around. Alex, do you have any thoughts on the late former vice president?
Well, this was before I was born, so there's that. However, and I want to bite back a little bit against the idea that he paved the way for Kamala Harris. I mean, I think him selecting a woman as his vice presidential candidate was progressive for the time, but I think I don't give a man credit for paving the way for. I mean, I think the Hillary Clintons and the Shirley Chisholms and the other women who paved the way in their own work did more for this cause than maybe he did. But rest in peace, Walter Mondale. I got no problems with you. I hope that your family has comfort tonight, and God bless to you and the Mondale family.
I'm a big Geraldine Ferraro fan myself. I did a piece on Stonewall Spotlight. Listen, it's fine. I do think that he was.
I was -1.
You were what?
I was -1.
Okay, fine. Ebony, do you have any thoughts on
years old
as someone who was a toddler when he ran for president? Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, the trajectory of my entire life probably would have been different had Walter Mondale won in 1984. I mean,
yes.
Well, and I've got nothing against Geraldine Ferraro. I'm a fan. So, Minnesota has an interesting history, right? Paul Wellstone, Walter Mondale. It's an interesting place. I've had vice presidents on the brain this week too. I did a whole sort of Tipper and Al deep dive this weekend. And this is a surprise, because there's just certain people who have been around for decades, and we don't expect them to go away. So we've still got Jimmy Carter. Walter Mondale has passed. This is kind of like the end of an era in a lot of ways for America. I really do think, and I always say this, that our side, the liberals, the progressives, we really need to do a better job of bringing up the next generation, of mentoring. And he is somebody who did do that. And he did that sort of without hammering away about being a liberal or being a progressive, but doing the work. What he did say was, my whole life I've worked on the idea that government can be an instrument for social progress. And there's so many people now in government who hate government, who want to be in government, that it's really great to reflect on somebody who thought government should help people and work to make that happen.
It's so interesting you say that about the people who hate government, because it was such a juxtaposition. Oh, yeah, there's one right there. But it it was, get that face off the screen. It was such a juxtaposition, right? To have the Carter Mondale and then Mondale Ferraro ticket versus Reagan and Bush. Reagan, who famously said that the most frightening words are, and I'm just paraphrasing him because he doesn't deserve being quoted, but the most frightening words are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." It's just like, are you serious? Like, the role of government is to help people. And of course, yes, he was a mentor specifically to Senator Amy Klobuchar, who was an intern in his office when he was vice president. And he really helped to support her campaigns and eventually her campaign for president in 2020. Molly, do you have any reflections on losing a Democratic giant?
Yeah, I was actually 25 years old at the time. I'm actually 76. I'm just kidding. Usually I tell kids that, and it's fun. Just be like,
that is fun. That is fun. You should always like put the age up, and then people are just like, do it.
I mean, yeah, people like to ask Black women in particular often how old we actually are, so I just usually lie. I was not actually around when he was running, but I do think that while he may not have done all the work to pave the way for women in particular, I think that in 2021 there is something to be said about someone when they pass away, and all we can really do is actually find good things to say about them. I think that speaks for itself, right? Because there's so much that we do scrutinize now, and there's so much that people are waking up to, and to have somebody like him, I think there are individuals throughout history that do help make things happen, and do try to lift up others. I was watching a forum the other night. Let me not be shady. But I was watching something the other day with a candidate, and they asked the candidate, what have you done for women? What have you done for gender equity? And he said, "I'm not going to lie to you. I haven't done anything. I haven't done anything for them." And that was it. And so, just to know that somebody, of his stature existed is we probably do owe, quite a bit of credit to someone like him. And, I hope that his family is finding some solace in, in his life and his memory tonight. And all right, like it's we do start to lose people. And I do think, I agree with Ebony in thinking about like, what is the pipeline going down to, like who is coming up underneath these folks? How are we creating a new generation? And it's interesting because all the infrastructure stuff coming up right now, and watching like Bernie and AOC work together, and see these, these moments of people trying to learn and trying to teach each other, because they do have a love for, what the government is supposed to be doing for the people who pay the taxes of everybody that works for the government. So maybe it will continue to catch on. Maybe we'll continue to see more Walters, and have them pass their gifts down.
We're having a little bit of a theme where we're talking about, because you're talking about the courage work that you do, Molly, and like when we see people either move on to other positions or pass away or retire, it is a big question about who's coming behind them. And I do want to clarify that he didn't solely pave the way. I know, obviously, there are a lot of women who paved the way for themselves, of course, and for other women. But it was certainly a bold move back in 1984.
We need allies. So it is what it is.
Right. And he also helped to define the role of vice president in a way. You know, the vice president never had an office in the West Wing. He was the first. Vice presidents never really tackled special policy projects. He was the first to do that. And then from that point on, the vice presidency that used to be known as kind of like a laughable, like, who cares? You're just there just in case. I mean, like Harry Truman only had lunch with FDR once. That's it, before becoming president when he died. So it's like, so it just changed that role significantly, and we continue to evolve the role now to where you see like Biden and Harris side by side, and you saw Obama and Biden side by side and doing work together and really kind of running the country together in tandem. And that gives people a much stronger view, I think, of the executive branch when you see that it's not just one figurehead. You mentioned the infrastructure package, Molly. I want to talk about that a little bit because I think that's a very important piece of news that is also happening right now, because the Biden administration is working with Democrats to come up with what that plan is going to look like. Of course, right now, looks as though it's going to go through reconciliation. But one of the things in particular that is highlighted here is how much it focuses on climate. And I found a very interesting article that CNN put out that said that coal miners, were pro the infrastructure plan because it had all of these reforms with climate, and it gave opportunities for the industry to kind of evolve and change. So in a nod to, not a nod, but in a dig to Joe Manchin, who seems to be one of the opponents of going this way, one of the biggest industries in his state is kind of gunning for this. So I'm going to go to Ebony. Do we have a lot of opportunities here with climate and climate reform through this package?
I think we have so much to do in terms of climate education for folks to understand. I mean, we still have people who ask about your opinion on climate change, right? That's still something that so many people consider up for discussion. The people who get it, but the folks who are determined not to get it don't, and refuse to. And so that is what worries me, is that when we have an opening to have these climate conscious plans, that the folks who are simply determined not to be open to it will block. And so I think we have some environmental education that needs to happen. And then we just need some real, folks to push through these bills. I think that environmentalists tend to be like generally nice people, right? We need some like rough and tough environmental people to really make this work.
Yeah, and it's also interesting when you have an industry that can be snuffed out by other cleaner energy sources saying like, no, we're ready. We need to evolve. Like, we need to change. You see that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes with the gas industry, the oil industry, now and then. And they kind of acknowledge that. And the auto industry is acknowledging that some changes need to happen, and they're committing to changes with the new administration. So it can be exciting, and you can see that evolution happen. On the other side of the aisle, the GOP, that seems to be incredibly starkly opposed to anything that Democrats do or come up with, just because we're Democrats and they hate us. They want to come up with a counter plan. And keeping things in West Virginia, Senator Shelley Moore Capito commented this week that there is going to be, in a matter of days, a Republican plan. Now, we saw something like this happen with the American Rescue Plan, the COVID relief plan, that obviously has changed so much since Biden took office. And they kind of came to the table with this very, very weak proposal. Alex, do you think that it's going to be a lot like that? Do you think we're going to see history repeat itself? Oh, I think we have... Are we frozen? Alex is frozen. Like the Madonna song. Remember?
History repeat itself with what now?
Uh-oh. Okay. I think while we wait for Alex to come back, Molly, do you want to take that question? Did you know that, of course, Republicans are coming to the table with very bad faith proposals, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like really listen to anything they do and just kind of take it all for some like bullshit. I'm sure they'll bring something. Okay.
I can hear
Oh.
you. I don't know.
We're gonna
if you
do
can hear
this.
me or not.
We it's funny because I think like Republicans tend to say that when we get an opportunity to bring a plan, that we bring everything that we can possibly bring into that plan, because really we're just trying to like take all the things over. And I don't really think they're wrong. I think that an infrastructure plan should be like holistic. It should include a lot of different things. I think that, you know, we will see real citizens come around when they see plans that we bring forth, especially, you know, you mentioned the coal miners. I think that it's hard, like Ebony said, like we're still talking about climate change as if it is like, what is your opinion on this? Until somebody sees their way out of something or sees an opportunity for their way out of something, or like losing who they are and something that is, you know, new and scary that folks are talking about, they don't believe in it. So, you know, I think we see the auto industry adapting because they've been through it, right? Like how many times has the auto industry just gone bankrupt and like not been able to keep up with the times and not, you know, plan further ahead of time. I think that people are trying to plan ahead of times themselves. And so being able to see a future for themselves in this country is helpful. So the fact that we did put out a plan like we did, and that it seems to be making some waves of something. And I think Republicans are always going to want to have a counter. I think that they view many of the things that we see as, you know, very important and crucial right now to address in order to take care of all these different systemic problems that we know are going on. Like, it's not just about building roads, it's about creating jobs, it's about fixing schools, it's about making sure we have a place to like breathe clean air that won't, you know, give everybody in 2050 asthma. This is going to be an ongoing, you know, battle, I think, with most Republicans, and, you know, damn the filibuster, and who knows, we'll see what happens. I don't really know what the Republicans are going to bring, and like I said, I don't really care. Hopefully we'll figure out a way around it.
I really love the like I don't care attitude. It's a very good thing, you know. It's interesting.
You're gonna say something I don't like whatever you're gonna say, I'm probably not gonna like it. So whatever.
Yeah. I saw a really great tweet, and like a lot of my friends, including Alex, who I'm not sure if he's unfrozen yet, but know this about me. I always buck back against the devil's advocate point of view. And I saw a great tweet from a professor who said, I tell my students never to enter the devil's advocate argument, because there's nothing good that comes from bringing a bad faith argument to the table and arguing why something that is, you know, morally justified and good can be, you know, anything but. So I always find that interesting, and they really do live in another reality. As Michael commented, the GOP just had a Fox News freak out about the annual justification of nuclear weapons. There's just a complete disconnect from reality. So, you know, we're talking about these big policy issues. We're talking about these big things that need to happen, and they just are completely disconnected from all reality, as though it's not even real. And it's just, it blows my mind. And it's like, at least, you know, I see that they are coming up with a plan or a response, but as weak as it may be, and it's always coming from a very small group of their senators or a very small group of their members of Congress. So it's just becoming this caucus of insanity.
Right. I mean, I don't want to bring myself back to this show again, but I again will say, watching this show Them is like, basically it's about like redlining in the 50s, and a family from a family from down south that tries to come in and integrate East Compton, and the things and the thoughts and the words that are said out of these people's mouths in 1951 are so vindicative of the same shit that like Republicans in particular are still saying these days, and still like, well, isn't that how these people, like, no, none of them people know us. None of them know us. They don't know what they need. They don't know what we need. They don't know, they think they know what we want and what we're trying to get over on them, right? It's still very much, we're still seen in their eyes as just like, we're trying to take everything from them. And until they're able to fix that about themselves, I'm not interested in anything they have to bring, because, like you said, it's a small group of people who don't actually know the world trying to make policies for people who they have no connection to.
Right. If we bring it back to that idea of looking at the younger generation, like the younger people who are kind of up and coming on our side, and they have like Matt Gaetz and or Gates, and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert. It's like that they don't have like functional ideas. So we have Alex back, and I'm gonna have you weigh in, Alex. We were just kind of talking about the infrastructure plan, the GOP's bad faith proposal that may come, and just how they're not connected to reality. So I want to get your thoughts on that.
I mean, look, you don't need to look any further than the way the Fox News has covered the Derek Chauvin trial. They are covering that there was a study that was done. They covered Maxine Waters and her statements about people needing to get aggressive if there's an acquittal. They covered that more than they did the actual trial. Fox News, conservative media, which I believe has a total stranglehold over conservative politicians and their messaging and their tactics. They're more interested in covering police aggression towards police or protesters protesting police violence than they are the police violence themselves. They're more interested in calling out Maxine Waters, making her the boogeyman. She's their go-to boogeyman about this issue than they are the issue of a police officer killing a person of color for no apparent reason and having it documented on camera. So when it comes to anything politically, the infrastructure bill or otherwise, the Republican Party has completely lost any sense of identity, value, moral compass, conviction in anything real. They're a wholly owned subsidiary of big oil and gas and major corporations. And there's a reason why Mitch McConnell was so mad when those corporations started speaking out against Jim Crow 2021 and Jim Crow 2.0 laws being passed across the country. It's because he only wants these corporations to serve him and his interests. And so far, that's all they have done. And so, it's not at all surprising to me. And this is your reminder, everybody, that Democrats must eliminate the filibuster. I'm talking to you, Kirsten Sinema, and I'm talking to you, Joe Manchin. If you want to get anything done that's not budget related, if you want to get HR 1, the For the People Act, if you want to get the Justice and Policing Act, if you want to get substantive climate change reforms, if you want to get substantive gun reform legislation, if you want to make climate, changes to fight climate change, any of these issues, we have to eliminate or reform the filibuster, period. Because the Republican Party has been, this is not new. The Republican Party has been the party of obstructionism for the last 30 years at least. And it's time that we put it to an end.
And looking at you too, Dianne Feinstein, Maggie Hassan, who has a tough race in my neighboring home state of New Hampshire. She's been a little cagey about it too. The two senators from Delaware, including Chris Coons, who has Joe Biden's seat. I mean, they are not committing to this. I mean, it goes beyond the two that I think we always yell at. And we in California have the opportunity to really lobby our senator and fight for this as well. So that's something that we're big advocates of too.
I thought Senator Feinstein came out in support of some reforms. Am I wrong?
She's
because we've all been. It's because we've all been pushing her. She's ready to get everybody off her back. Like that is what it is. She got enough other stuff going on that she's giving some leeway, I feel like, on this. But I don't think there's a guarantee with her. I think we got to stay on her neck.
We do. Yeah, she doesn't want us on her lawn, but we got to stay, and we have to,
well, I'm comfortable on your lawn, Diane.
I'm going to pitch a tent and move in, Diane, because
I'm ready to go camping. I've got firewood. I am comfortable.
Yeah, but that's to Molly's point. Like, this is what changes people, is when we stay on them and we make sure that we are relentless in our activism and that we continue to be in touch with their offices and we continue to do the work. It is really up to us. So Jane comments that finally there are some corporations showing that they're not all about profits. Finally, some of them are stepping up a little, but but really. It's a little, it's Jane, a letter.
I adore you, but they're just scared of the
I love you, Jane.
They're scared of the blowback because people are outraged by it. So really, I mean, are they really?
Yeah.
Corporate CEOs have taken away record profits during the pandemic. They don't get any kind of pass from me. It is an atrocity. It is an embarrassment the way that the corporate America has run away with record profits, making hundreds of times more in their salary than their low-wage workers. It is an abhorrent atrocity, an abomination. It's nauseating. And now these same wealthy corporate CEOs are scrambling to hide their money because they know that they're going to get a reduction in their exemptions because Joe Biden has promised to raise that tax rate. And Democrats, you're not so innocent on this either. Democrats in the Senate now proposing to raise the tax rate to 25%, whereas Joe Biden was proposing 28% in order to pay for this infrastructure bill, and Democrats playing softball on this. Yes, it's a welcome increase, fine, sure. But you know what? 28% tax rate is still lower than any tax rate in American history since World War II.
Yeah.
It's
and you know what?
The big, rich head honchos to pay your fair share. It's time to eat the rich, okay? Just eat them.
Listen, I'm about to take a flight tomorrow on JetBlue, and JetBlue broke their initial promise to not donate to politicians who voted against the certification of the election, and they donated to, I can't remember her last name, Nicole, I think it's Malliotakis, who is the new congresswoman from Staten Island, who voted against certifying the election. So they donated to her. And I think it's probably going to be the last flight that I take on JetBlue for a very long time, unless they course correct and they make a statement. But they kind of dug their heels in on this one. So I don't think the companies
get red. Am I right?
Right. Look at that Twitter hashtag.
Get red.
But it is concerning, and it's something that we have to pay attention to. So going back to like what Molly was saying, it's, we have to pay attention to the things that people do. And when they let up a little bit, it's not like, oh, good, they're on our side, we're good. No, we need to continue to fight, and we need to continue to boycott if need be. But we are running out of time, and it is time for us to open the library. It's our time to stand on a soapbox and talk about whoever we want or whatever we want for a couple of minutes. I'm going to go over to Ebony. It's been a few minutes since we've chatted, so I want to hear your read this week.
My read this week is in praise of Darnella Frazier, who is the 17-year-old Black girl who had the frame of mind that I did not have at 17 to record for 10 minutes the murder of George Floyd, which she witnessed with her smaller cousin who was right next to her and a few other assorted citizens in that town in Minnesota. Darnella Frazier was just walking to the store when she witnessed someone's life get taken by the state. And it made me think of another young Black girl, Nia Kenny, who in 2015 recorded a school resource officer, a policeman in Spring Valley High School in South Carolina, flip a 15-year-old girl out of a chair. And, Black girls are often targeted for punishment. They're sort of hyper analyzed, hyper punished. They're punished for not being male and punished for not being white in a school system that rewards both, right? And so time and again, though, we see Black girls who are the people who are willing to speak up, even when people don't necessarily speak up for them. So if Darnella Frazier hadn't recorded George Floyd's murder, we would not be able to celebrate this one measure of justice today. And so this is just me pouring my heart out to Black girls, because our country doesn't always value them in the way that that we should. And so that's my read today.
I echo this comment at that read. Thank you so much, Ebony. Alex, I'm going to go over to you. Who would you like to read this week?
This week, I'd like to read the CEO of Navient, one of the leading student loan servicers, Navient, I don't know, in the country, who appeared before Senator Elizabeth Warren's committee hearing in the U.S. Senate on student loans and the possibility of canceling student loan. Of course, good old Senator Warren handed his ass to him and really humiliated him. But I think it's worthy to note for all of our viewers and anyone who might be paying attention, the atrocity of the student loan crisis and how these CEOs of these companies are profiting hundreds of millions of dollars off of the backs of student borrowers. 2/3 of all student debt is owned by women, okay, and is a huge burden for women particularly. It's a gender equity issue. It's also a racial equity and racial justice issue. And yet these CEOs making so much profit and engaging in predatory lending practices, benefiting off of a system that has no consumer protections in place for student borrowers. And it's over $1 trillion crisis. And some people are still saying, well, why should you get a break if I didn't get to have a break? Or, defending these kinds of CEOs because, well, it's America, it's capitalism. They earned their money. They didn't earn their money. They're making profits off of our backs, off of a system that literally is holding back an entire generation, maybe two, from any semblance of financial independence or freedom. And it's time that people got wise about this and demand not just student debt cancellation. Okay, $50,000 student debt cancellation is a nice little Band-Aid. It solves the problem for a lot of borrowers right now, but it is not a solution in the long term, because guess what? The system that led us to this crisis is still going to be there. So if you want serious changes, you've got to reinstitute consumer protections. That means bankruptcy. Bankruptcy protections for student borrowers means that lenders can't prey on them and take advantage of their weaknesses, force them into defaults in order to make more money, capitalize their interest into their principal balance year after year after year after year. There's no reason that somebody who takes out $20,000 of student loans should owe $150,000 of student loans. That's outrageous. The system needs a reworking. I applaud Senator Warren on her efforts to do this. I applaud actually sort of unexpected ally in this, Senator Chuck Schumer, Senate Majority Leader, calling for student debt cancellation of $50,000 for Americans. But we need to do more. We need to stay on this. And sup, Shooms? And, that's my read for the week.
It's something I feel very passionately about too, Alex, and it's a great example of how activism how it's just an ongoing thing, and we have to keep hammering it home. So we've warmed up the plate for Molly. Molly, what's your read this week?
Yeah, no, I still pay Navient every month, so thanks for that. Much appreciated. But I will go back to where Ebony is at with, representing Black Women's Democratic Club, some bold Black women. As we spoke about earlier, Fox spent more time trying to demonize Auntie Maxine from our great state of California here around the Chauvin trial. instead of actually giving the details that were needed. And as we spoke about earlier, it is the right's work in life to figure out how to make people hate us. And I think that's, again, what they've always tried to do with Maxine. And I just love that she continues to stand up, continues to speak her mind, and inspires people, frankly, that need someone to tell them something like that. And then just to piggyback on that, I also just want to speak on what's been going on, what's happened, being accused of it. Black Lives Matter founder, co-founder Patrisse Cullors, a conservative, some conservative authors put out and publications put out a lot of her, personal information and financial dealings and plans, and talked about her having a couple of homes and building on the what she has created, who she is, not through Black Lives Matter, but as a consultant, as an advisor, as a producer, as all of these other things. And Black women wear many different hats, and we have to figure out how to be nimble and how to make sure we get what we need. And for them to, again, try to demonize someone who's such ahead in the movement, when this woman is trying to build some generational wealth in a perfectly legal manner, which I can't say the same for most Republicans that are still sitting in elected seats, was just really disappointing. And I'm really, thankful and happy to see how much of our community has stood up for her this week, in particular, and coming out and standing with Patrisse and, trying to explain to people how Black women tend to be demonized anytime we get up. And, just want to say, of course, stand with Patrisse, stand with anti-Maxine, and hope that we can continue to lift up individuals like them so that we can thrive a little bit more and help, actually build the justice and the systems that our communities deserve. So, love to Black women.
I love that. Thank you so much, Molly. And, God forbid women, especially Black women, make money off of consulting and off of speeches and things like that. I mean, we just see that demonized so much, and it's just completely idiotic. But the right is always going to find things to create villains out of people on the left, and it's just such a shame. So thank you so much for that read. Mine is incredibly quick. I just want to say happy 420 to all those who partake. And when you are doing that tonight and celebrating the holiday that some people celebrate every day, and that's completely fine because it's legal. But please remember that out of the industry leaders who have created this new and exciting industry around cannabis in our country, only 5% of those industry leaders are Black. There is a huge racial inequity problem in this industry, and there's a huge racial inequity problem around cannabis, period, because there are countless Black and brown people who are still in prison serving sentences for dealing with a substance that is now completely legal in many states throughout the country, and something that we are pushing to make legal nationwide. So on this 420, I want you to think about ways that we can make that a more equitable area in our country, and obviously the people who should not be behind bars in a system that is punishing them for something that is now legal. So that's my read for the week. This has been The Read Down, a production of the Stonewall Democratic Club. If you are interested in what we are up to here at Stonewall, you can join us for as little as $25 a year. Just check us out at stonewalldems.org. You can visit us here every Tuesday night on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're watching us. We so appreciate you tuning in. Molly Watson is our guest this week. Molly, where can we find you? Where can we follow Courage California and everything that you're working on?
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you all for doing this. I'm glad that you have your voice out here like this weekly. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, etc. Hey May, how you doing, girl? Another one of our awesome Black Women's Democratic Club members. You can find me at Malls427 because that's my screen name, MOLLZ 427, and you can find Courage on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook as well. Our handle is Courage, COURAGECA, for Courage California. formerly Courage Campaign, now Courage California.
Excellent. And the Black Women's Democratic Club. Can we follow you guys as well?
Yes, we are on Twitter and on Instagram. Same thing. Black Women's Democratic Club, I think, is our actual handle on Black Women's Dem Club, and on Black Women's Dem Club on Twitter as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
So please do follow along.
Yes, we want to follow and support you and everything that you're doing. So thank you so much, Molly. It would be great to have you come back. Alex, Ebony, it was wonderful to see you both this week. And we also want to give a thank you to Peter Dens. Yes, Alex.
Peter.
We love you, Peter. Thank you. I just also have one quick message for Fox News.
Okay. There it is. Yes.
Love to see it.
Love to see it. She is just a love. I feel a love for this woman. How can you demonize this woman? She's incredible. Anyway, we're going to talk more.
In her campaign office for 2 full days before she would agree to take that picture with me.
Okay, so we have a bit of a stalking issue, but we're going to get into that and more next time on the Read Down. We will see you next time. Thank you so much and good night.